Hi, I really hope that you're having a wonderful day so far. I'm super excited because I have a tutorial for you guys on how to crochet this cute little coin purse. So I'll start by showing you how to crochet the base, which is made out of a single crochet and simple single crochet increases. Then we will move on to the marguerite stitch, which is the star of this pattern. Next, I will show you how to seam two panels together using the whip stitch. And then we will finish this video off by me showing you how to sew a metal flex frame to the top. Hello again and welcome to Sew Homey. My name is Abby and I'm so excited that you have joined me today. Now before we get any further into this video, I just really want to encourage you that if you're enjoying yourself or you like what you see at any point in this video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing to my channel, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now let's go ahead and talk about the coin purse. This is an original pattern that I wrote, and the coin purse is called the MJ43, and it is the second pattern from the Mary Jane series, which is a collection of 3 patterns that I designed for the summer. And if you would like to gain access to all 3 patterns, I have a link below where you can sign up to my newsletter, and I will send you all of those details straight to your inbox. So check that out if you're interested. The first pattern, in case you missed it, was for the MJ42, which is a sunglasses case that looks like this. Now, I actually made a separate tutorial for this pattern, which I will leave a link for you in case you are interested. But also in that video, I go a little bit more into detail about the inspiration behind this collection. But basically, all I was saying is that I wanted to create a collection of patterns that would give you some fun summer projects that you could crochet that are very quick and very easy. That way you can get your crochet fix and then have fun with your summer activities as well. Each pattern uses the same stitch, which is the marguerite stitch, or you might also know that as the star stitch, just because that was the main inspiration behind this collection. But as you'll see, each pattern has slight differences. The sunglasses case was crocheted in purely just marguerite stitches. And then the coin purse was crocheted with a single crochet base and then a marguerite stitch body, and that just gives it a nice contrast. And then if you stay tuned, the third pattern is a clutch, which looks kind of similar to this coin purse, but I just flipped the marguerite stitches the other way. So this is the pattern that you can look forward to coming after the coin purse. I imagine this coin purse getting a lot of different uses. You could throw it in your beach bag and tote it to the beach or the pool and use it there, or I personally like to use it at the farmer's market because it's just the right size where it'll fit in my pocket and then I can get it out to use. Or I have also used this on the go for whenever I needed a bag for my stitch markers and my tapestry needle. So you can get creative with this. It's not just for coins or money. You can use it for many different purposes. I chose to use Lion Brand Comfy Cotton Blend yarn for this project. Now it's a number 3 or a DK weight yarn, and the fiber content is 50% cotton and 50% polyester. Now I chose this yarn purely because I already had a full skein of it on hand, so it was very easy for me to access to use for these projects. But for a project such as this, the fiber content is very important because you want a cotton yarn, because with the coin purse, you're going to toss it into a bag or, somewhere that it can get dirty and it's going to get a lot of friction. So you want a yarn that will be durable, and cotton is very strong and it is a washable fiber. So those are 2 factors to keep in mind in case you're not going to use the same type of yarn. Now I should mention that I tested this pattern out with a worsted weight or a number 4 weight yarn as well. And all of those details will be in the pattern. And then in addition to the yarn, you're also going to need a few more materials. So you need a crochet hook, and that size is 4mm or a US size G. You also need a tapestry needle, a metal flex frame, then you'll need pliers and also scissors. So once you have all of those materials collected, you want to get your hands on a copy of the pattern, and there are a few ways that you can do so. So first, and probably easiest, will be through my website. You can just use the link that I provided below for you, and that'll take you straight to the website where I have a free version of this pattern, and all of those written instructions will be there. But you can also support me as a designer and purchase my PDF version of this pattern. And in that pattern, I actually give you additional resources that are in video format and picture formats. I briefly mentioned this before, but if you are interested in obtaining all 3 patterns, I do have a way for you to do so. If you sign up to my newsletter, I'll send you all those details right to your inbox. The coin purse has a base that is made out of single crochets, and if you'll notice, you'll see that the bottom has rounded edges. And we get this shape by crocheting what is called an increase along the sides of the coin purse. So I'm going to show you how to crochet the base right quick. So to begin the base, we have our crochet hook, and then we have our yarn, and we want to first start by making a slip knot, and then we will slide that onto the crochet hook and begin by chaining the number of chains according to the pattern. So for this one, for this video, and for this size of the coin purse, I am going to chain 13. So I'm going to begin by just making a simple chain. 1, 2, 3, and you want to make sure that you aren't chaining too tight, because otherwise the base of this part is going to curl a ton, which on this one I believe I actually used a bigger crochet hook to make the chain, so you can go a size up if that's helpful. Otherwise, just try to just pull on it so that it's not too tight whenever you make that chain. So here we have our 13 chains, and now typically whenever you work off of a chain, you're going to skip one and make a single crochet into the top loop of the next chain space, and then you're going to make a single crochet. That is typically how you make one, or traditionally I should say. But for this coin purse and for all of the Mary Jane series, I am going to have you crochet into the back bump of the chain. So all that means is whenever we flip this over, you can see that it looks quite a bit different. There's this little line, these dashed lines, I guess, along the back, and that is the back bump. So whenever you're looking at the chain like this, you see a sideways V, or like a greater than or less than sign, I suppose. That is the front side of the chain. Whenever you flip it over and you see this little ridge, that is the back bump. And whenever you flip it over this way, you can kind of see that ridge, and that's what the back bump is of the chain. So we're just going to make a normal single crochet, but instead of going through the top, skipping one and going through the top, we're just going to flip this over, and that is the first bump, back bump, and then that's the second one. So the first one can be just a little bit tricky to get to, because if you pull the chain too tight, this little back bump is going to tighten up as well, because it's all kind of connected. So you want to be a little bit loose, and you might have to use your thumb to try to get it. You might see me struggle for a minute, but if you kind of just put your crochet hook there and then use your thumb to get that loop over, and I'm just using my fingernail, you can kind of see where I'm coming, and then you get it through like so, and then we're just going to yarn over and then make just a normal single crochet like that. And then so you have the first one done, Then we're going to flip it over and go into that next back bump, which you can see right here. And insert the hook, yarn over, and then make a single crochet. So you're just going to do this all the way across the back of the chain, just single crocheting into the back bumps. And whenever you are done, you should have a total of 13 at the end. Alright, so I just completed my very first row of single crochets, and I did that into the back bumps. And why we do that is because when you look at the bottom of this, whenever we crocheted in the back bump, we pushed the top stitches to the front. So you see all of these V's, and it gets a little twisted just because of how this stitch is. But this is what you should have, and this makes it so much easier whenever you have the stitches like this. It's so much easier to whip stitch the two panels together. So from here, you're going to go on to row number 2, and this is where we will introduce the increase. And an increase is super simple. I'll show you how to do that. So row 1 is complete. Now we need to chain 1 so that we can continue on to row number 2. So I like to chain, and then I will flip that over. And in our first stitch, we're going to increase. So all that means is that we're going to increase this stitch by 1, which means we put 2 stitches in here. So we have 1 single crochet and 2 single crochet. And then from here, we're just going to single crochet in each stitch across, except for the last one. We will increase in the last one as well. So I'm going to continue single crocheting across, but we want to increase on this row by 2 stitches. It's 1 on each side, and that's just going to give us a nice shape to the coin purse. So that's the only reason why we increase on the base, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. Let me go ahead and finish up this row. Okay, so right here I have 2 more stitches. So the second to last stitch, I do a regular old single crochet. And in the last stitch we increase again, which means we add 2 single crochet into that 1 stitch. So here I have 1, and here I have 2. So now when we count the number of stitches at the top, we should have 15 rather than 13, because we added a stitch on this side, on the right side, and a stitch on this side, the left side. So that's how you complete an increase. And now whenever you go up to the next row, you're just going to single crochet all the way across, and then continue the pattern of increasing and then the single crochet row. Just alternate those two according to the pattern. It'll tell you how many times, but for now I will go ahead and leave you to do that. So once you finish the base according to the pattern, meaning you just add the number of rows that the pattern tells you to, alternating between the increase and the just regular single crochet row, you're going to get a base that's like this. And what happens, let me lay it here, what happens with the increase rows is you can see that there's a little bit of shape here along the bottom. So whenever we whip stitch the 2 panels together, we will get the coin purse where it has a rounded bottom here. So after you have the base completed, it is time to move on to the marguerite stitch, which is a 2-row repeat. And it looks complicated, but I promise it's not. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, so I have the base done now, and now I want to show you how to make the marguerite stitch, which is going to go on top of the base. So for the first row, because a marguerite stitch is a 2-row repeat, so I'll show you the first row, and sorry about that autofocus, and in order to start it off, we're going to chain 2 And now we're going to be working in like loops. It's a loop stitch, so we're going to be drawing a lot of loops and then drawing one yarn over through all of them to hold them together. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So we have 2 chains, and we're going to pull a loop through the back bumps of both of these chains. So just as we did for the first row, working into the back bumps, we're going to do that for the chain 2. And you will do this always because it gives you a much, much cleaner edge. So here's that first loop, and again, that first one can get a little tight, but don't worry, you can get it, I have no doubt. I guess a tip on how to do that is don't pull the chain super, super tight, otherwise that back bump will get really, will get too tight as well. So I have the back bump on my I have the back bump on my crochet hook. Now I'm just going to yarn over and pull a loop through that back bump. And then I'm going to go down to the next back bump, insert my hook through there, and pull up a loop. So after you go through the loops, the back bumps, and you pull up a loop through those, you should have 3 loops on your hook right now. And the goal is actually to have 6. So I went from here, working on the side of the stitch, and I just flip it over like so. And now I'm just going to draw a loop through the next 3 stitches. So I have the first one, and you do go into the very first stitch. So that's 4, 5, then we have 6. So now that we have 6 loops on our hook, we yarn over, pull through all 6 loops, and those become the legs. The loops become the legs, and I'll explain that in just a second. And then we chain 1 to close that, which closes the marguerite. This will be our very first marguerite, and that chain space right here is going to be called the eye. So I'm just going to move on to the next marguerite, and I'll use these terms so that you get used to them. So this is the eye again. So you're going to go through the eye, draw a loop through the eye, and we have 2 loops on our hook. And then I told you that these are called legs. So this is the first one, this is the last one. We just want to find that very last leg of the loop, or of the loops, and I only go through 1, if that makes sense. So technically the loop kind of has a back and a front, but I only go through the very front one. So I find that easiest. I've done it both ways, and I think that this one looks better actually. So we go through that leg. So now we have 3 loops. And now where we went through the leg, that's in a single crochet stitch, because we drew up a loop through that one. That was the last stitch that we drew up a loop through. Well, now you want to go through that same single crochet, the same one as that last leg, pull up a loop here. We have 4, and then you go into the next 2 single crochets and draw up a loop. So that gives you 6 loops on your hook. You yarn over, pull through all 6, chain 1 to close, and this is going to be our second marguerite. So I'll show you one more time, and we go through the eye and pull up a loop. We find that last leg, which is right here, which is just one of those loops that you put on your hook the last time. Oops. And there we go. We pull that loop through, and you can see that this is the single crochet, the top of it, where you have that last leg. So we want to pull up 1 loop there, and then we have a total of 4. We move on to the next one, pull up a loop, and then last one to pull up a loop. So we always want 6, then we yarn over, pull through, chain 1 to close. So that is all there is to the marguerite stitch. But whenever you get to the very end of the row, you will add a half double crochet into the last stitch, which you're going to have a leg there, so you're just going to put a half double crochet there, and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so I've gotten to the end. I have all 6 loops on here, and I'm going to go ahead and close off this last marguerite. But as I was telling you, on the very last marguerite, you want to add a half double crochet, and this is going to give you a nicer edge along the side. That's the whole reason for it. So we're just going to add a half double crochet in that same single crochet as where that last leg is coming from. So that, in my case, it's right here. So I just do a half double crochet, and now we have the start of a marguerite stitch. But as I was saying, this is a 2-row repeat, so this is only the first row, and the second row is going to add a few more little loops coming off to give you a longer looking stitch. So you can see we only have the bottom half done, and that next row is going to add the top of it. So the second part, or the second row, is super easy of the marguerite stitch. You just chain 1, you flip your, or turn your work over. We're going to add a single crochet where we added a half double crochet. So 1 single crochet, and then you move on to the eye, which is that hole. We go to this eye, add 1 single crochet, and then from here on out, every eye, we add 2 single crochets. So here's my next eye. I'm going to add a total of 2 single crochets inside of that. Move to the next eye, add 2 single crochets. So let me show you what that looks like now. So here we have a completed marguerite stitch right here. These are complete and these are the halves. So you can totally see a difference. It looks a lot better with the second row on there, but it still looks pretty cool here. But this also ensures the way that you're crocheting on the back side of the panel, or for the marguerite stitch, since you're crocheting along the back side, always the marguerite stitch is going to face the front side. So that's another reason for this row. So again, I just find that next eye and add 2 single crochets across, and then whenever we get to the end, we add 2 single crochets into the eye, and then we will add 1 single crochet to the chain space. Okay, so I made it to the very last eye, and sometimes it's a little harder to see. It gets all scrunched up kind of sometimes, just depending on your tension. But this is my last eye, so I add 2 single crochets here. Oops, sorry, this yarn splits sometimes. There we go. Okay, so I have 1 single crochet, add that second single crochet, and then don't forget this step because you want a nice clean edge. You're going to add a single crochet into the chain space of that first chain, or second chain, I guess. So right here is where that chain space is. I just single crochet. And from here, we chain 2, pull up loops through the back bumps, pull up 3 loops, and just continue what I showed you for the first row of the marguerite, and you just continue that on for the number of rows that the pattern states, and then we will whip stitch these 2 panels together. After both panels are crocheted, we move on to the seaming technique that is called the whip stitch. Now this is probably the easiest part of this pattern, but it's very important because it gives it a sturdy seam so that change can't slip out of there. Okay, so here is the finished panel, and it looks identical to this one. The only difference is that I still have the yarn tails. So the one at the bottom is short, doesn't matter, we can weave that in at the very end. And then this one at the top, I want to go ahead and keep a long yarn tail. So I'd say this one probably measures between 25 and 35 inches or so. We'll see how much yarn I have at the end, and then I can tell you whether or not to do less or more. I'm sorry I didn't really do that before, but I just left a long yarn tail because I want to make sure that I have enough yarn to whip stitch these two panels together. So I went ahead and threaded my tapestry needle because that's what you need at this stage. And we have both of our panels. We know that this is the bottom because that's the base on both sides. So now we want to take one panel and place it on top of the other one. And this one, so in my sunglasses case, the MJ42, I recommended that you use stitch markers to hold the pieces in place, and you can totally do so, but I think that these are small enough that it doesn't really matter, but that's totally up to you. I'm just gonna try to, since it fits in my hand, I'll try to keep it all together. That way I don't get off. Just be careful of that. So a stitch marker might be useful for you. But the whip stitch is super simple. Probably like the easiest way to seam things together. So I'm going to take my tapestry needle. My yarn is coming from this side. I'm going to take my needle and come towards me, and I'm going to go through that first stitch on both sides. So here I have that first one, and then I'm trying to get through that second one. Just like so. Take the yarn and pull it all the way through. Next side. Since we're actually working on the sides of stitches, so this is each row. So you just want to go down to the next row, take your tapestry needle, under first side, under second side. And then you just pull that yarn all the way through, but you went the opposite way. So I ended on this side because I took the needle away from me. Next side, or next row I should say. We go to the next one, and you just whip stitch that together. Come towards you, insert needle, pull it all the way through, and make sure that you're pulling it tight after every stitch, because otherwise you could have issues. It'll be a little bit harder to tighten up, so make sure that you pull it tight all the way every time you do a stitch. So you just work back and forth, back and forth. That's literally all there is to the whip stitch. So I've made it to the bottom part. So I already seamed along this side, and I'm working my way across. So this is why I like to use the back bumps, because it makes seaming so much easier. All you have to do is look for the V and match it up with the same number, and then stick your needle through. So here I have the first V on the front panel, so I take my needle underneath, and then I have the next V, the next stitch on the back panel. I just take my yarn, pull it through, find the second stitch, and pull it through the opposite way, so coming towards me. And that is why we like to crochet into the back bumps, because it makes this part so much easier. So you're just going to continue whip stitching along the bottom and then along the side, and then whenever you have that done, catch up to me in the next segment. I'll show you how to add the flex frame. The final step to the coin purse is sewing the metal flex frame to the top. Now this segment was actually taken from the MJ42 or the Sunglasses Case tutorial. However, the same exact technique applies to the coin purse. The only difference is the size of the flex frame in that video. So this is what a flex frame looks like. It measures 4 inches, at least for the sunglasses case, but it opens on one end and then the other hinge is closed, which is exactly what you want. But we're going to begin by wrapping yarn around the flex frame, starting from the inside of the hinge, working our way out. And we do this so that we have a yarn tail on the outside, because that makes sewing it to the top of the sunglasses case much easier. You'll notice that I did tie the end of that yarn just to keep that wrap from coming undone. But now we're ready to sew the flex frame to the top of the panel. And we're going to start with the back panel. Doesn't matter, I just like to start with the back for some reason. So I have my yarn threaded with my tapestry needle. So I'm going through that first stitch from front to back. And this is the stitch that's closest to that seam. And then I'm pulling the yarn close all the way, or as close as I can. And then I'm going to take the first 3 of the wraps of yarn, which is why I told you groups of 3. And then I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through, and I'm going to pull it as tight as possible so that that flex frame meets up with the sunglasses case. And I did insert my needle from left to right on that one. Now I'm going through the next stitch, and I went from the front to back this time as well, pulled the yarn as tight as possible, and then I'm going to insert the needle from left to right underneath the next 3 wraps of yarn. So I have my 3, and I have my needle going from the left side and ending up on the right side. Then I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through again, and pull it as tight as possible so that it closes up any gaps. Then I'm just going to move on to that next stitch and insert my needle from front to back, pull that yarn all the way through, and then we're just going to repeat that process. We go through from left to right those next 3 wraps of yarn. So I have 1, 2, and 3. Pick all 3 of those up, like I am doing now. It gets a little tight sometimes, but you just want to do about 3 times, and then pull that yarn through all the way and cinch it closed. So like I said, we're going to continue this process until we reach the very end of that row and the flex frame. And I mentioned that you want to wrap the yarn in multiples of 3, and that's just because we're picking up 3 wraps of yarn per stitch. But it's also okay if you have more or if you have less. Just kind of eyeball it, and sometimes you might need to pick up 4 wraps of yarn, sometimes you might need to just pick up 2. Just eyeball it, or keep it exact if you can. It usually gets off whenever you have bigger flex frames, but for the sunglasses case, about 3 times the number of stitches that you have should work for you. So go ahead and finish up this side of the sunglasses case, and then I will show you how I like to get started on the next side of the flex frame. We have one side of the flex frame sewn to our sunglasses case. Now we need to wrap yarn around our second side of the flex frame. So you want to start by wrapping the yarn from the outside in, because that's where you want your excess yarn. Now all you need is that little pin that came with the flex frame and a pair of pliers. So our hinge is still open on that last part where we seamed. So now you just want to match those sides up so that the pin will fit through. And then you slide that pin through the center. Sometimes it takes a little bit because the flex frame doesn't want to cooperate, but you know, just put that pin in there. And then once it's there, you grab the pliers. And then you'll notice the two little tabs. There's one on the top and then one on the bottom. And you just want to use the pliers to close that. And typically I find it's easier to work one side at a time. So I got the first part down and then I'll do the second. I'll just shove that tab over, and then I like to just go over the top of it and squeeze it just to make sure that that hinge is going to stay closed. And then that's all there is to that. You close up that hinge and your flex frame is attached. I hope that you enjoyed learning those techniques with me today. I had so much fun demonstrating it for you, and it just gets me so excited, and I'm so grateful every time I get to share a new pattern with you. So I would like to remind you that if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. And then don't forget to leave me a comment letting me know what you think about the pattern and how yours turned out. So thank you again for watching. I hope that you have a great day, and I will see y'all next time.